These ponds in Southern California might not look like much, but they can soon be teeming with a species that's gone extinct in this region over 50 years ago: the California red-legged frog. Right now, biologists anxiously wait for a sign or a sound that their mission was a success. To understand how we got here, we need to go back in time. No one knows this story better than Brad Hollingsworth, curator of herpetology at the San Diego Natural History Museum.
Frogs that they were collecting back in the 30s are some of our only representatives that prove that they were in certain drainages and in certain watersheds, and allows us to map them.
Historical records like these show that the red-legged frog once thrived across Southern California, but due to habitat destruction, pollution, and competition from bullfrogs, they were extirpated from the region. In 1848, hundreds of thousands of hungry gold miners arrived in California. They ate what they could catch, and they developed a taste for the California red-legged frog. They were eating tens of thousands of frogs every single day. Unable to sustain such a dramatic predation, the California red-legged frog populations dwindled until there were too few to sustain the gold miners' appetites. So to replace one frog with another, the miners introduced the American bullfrog to California.
Bullfrogs were being sold for the frog leg cuisine of the gold rush era.
These big baddies are an invasive species to the West Coast, and since their introduction, they have gone on to fiercely outcompete and often eat the California red-legged frog.
I've found a bullfrog with a rat sticking out of its mouth, a native wood rat, and it has the tail sticking out of its mouth and it can't fit it all in. They're very ferocious.
Somehow the bullfrogs dodged the dinner plate and they thrived. While the gold rush ended, the bullfrogs stayed, pushing the red-legged frogs out of their habitat. For decades to come, the red-legged frog populations held on, but by the 1970s, the remaining populations had disappeared entirely from San Diego. The state amphibian was largely forgotten until, over 30 years later, a few scientists decided it was time for a change. In 2006, Annie Peralta Garcia, a biology student at San Diego State University, volunteered on a trip to Baja California. She was going on a mission looking for any remaining red-legged frog populations. With only an article and a few rumors to guide her, Annie and her colleagues took a leap of faith.
I guess it was back in 2006 that I joined a trip as a volunteer with the San Diego Natural History Museum. And yeah, that was the first time I saw a red-legged frog.
That gamble paid off. Hidden in unassuming ponds, Annie found what she was looking for. Unfortunately, there were many left.
This is the red-legged frog. This is where they are. They're only three watersheds, and they have really low genetic diversity, and so they're really in trouble.
Annie then laid the groundwork to making the reintroductions possible.
Instead of sitting idle, Annie reached out to colleagues in California, and together they came up with a plan to help save the red-legged frog. They began by building ponds at donor sites, areas they could manage, survey, and maintain. Just 2 years after the ponds in Baja were built, something amazing happened. The frogs started breeding, and after just 5 years, they were able to go from 20 frogs to over 300. Unfortunately, the frogs are threatened yet again by another invasive species.
They tried to eradicate the crayfish quickly before they took hold. But they were unsuccessful. They would consistently find the crayfish eating the red-legged frog eggs. So they have to pivot and change and adapt and learn how to, try to control crayfish when they have no experience with controlling crayfish.
The battle with the invasive species continued, but so did the progress with the red-legged frog. In 2020, Annie was giving a presentation at the San Diego Natural History Museum. That was the fateful day the idea of reintroducing the frogs to San Diego was born. A member of the Fish and Wildlife Service, Clark Winchell, was in the audience.
Like he said, I've been working on this ranch in San Diego where there used to be red-legged frogs, and we got rid of bullfrogs, and why don't we reintroduce them? So I think 2 months later, we were on a meeting with the ranch owner and the Nature Conservancy and a lot of people and say, we're going to go for it.
Their plan could hatch the first red-legged frogs in San Diego in decades. The mission quickly took shape. Multiple agencies, organizations, scientists, and conservationists stepped up to make it happen. When the time was right, they moved fast. The team collected egg masses, each mass with around 500 potential frogs that were then carefully packed into climate-controlled transport before they were raced across the border. While their partners in Mexico secured permits, the contacts in San Diego got to work making sure everything was set for the big move.
Our first and foremost obstacle is that we started this project in 2020. March 12th was our first release, and I think the official pandemic happened 2 days prior to that, so we ended up having to hire a helicopter. We used a helicopter to get them up to the border.
With the border threatening to close and precious eggs at risk, the team had one chance to pull this off. They made it across the border with their precious cargo and drove the last leg of the trip to the newly made ponds. By sundown, the eggs were in their new home, floating in holding pens, ready to hatch a new chapter for the red-legged frog.
Without any of these people, it wouldn't have been able to happen.
Years later, in 2024, the frogs that had hatched from those first eggs had fully matured, but there was a problem. They weren't laying any new eggs.
The males are the ones that call, and that's pretty much true for all frog species. And so that's their Tinder profiles. They're out there calling, and the female is then selecting based on their call, how strong it is, how deep it is, how low it is, whatever the preferences are of a given species.
Brad and his team used audio recorders to try and detect the frog calls. Their microphones recorded hours upon hours of wildlife sounds. They decided to use AI to speed up their detection process, but their AI model faced an unexpected challenge. A particular bird species kept triggering false positives on their system. The culprit, the hooded merganser. The herpetology team just refers to it as the frog duck.
So I called in Adam and Jess and Bennett, and we were all gathered around the speaker listening to this call. And we're like, yeah, it doesn't sound like a frog, but it does sound like a frog. So Bennett pulled out his bird app, Merlin, and recorded the call and sent it through the bird AI. And it hit the hooded merganser, and then we listened to a whole bunch of hooded merganser calls, and sure enough, it's like the mating call of the hooded merganser.
The frog duck was a small bump in the road, and they were able to improve the AI. Day after day passed with no calls detected, until...
Oh yeah, January 31st. Yeah, no, I know exactly when it was. Microphone 12 on Sylvan Pond picked up our first sounds that the frogs are on their own and calling vigorously.
The frogs have started their mating calls. These are promising signs that we'll soon see the first California red-legged frog born and bred in San Diego in over 50 years.
You're doing experimental science. This is all developed specifically for the red-legged frog. It's not done in many locations, so we have a few models to go off of other people, how they did it. We kind of had to do a lot of adjustments for what we were looking for, and to see that it works was really, really super exciting.
My goals this year is that they will start reproducing in the US. That would be really nice.
The return of the California red-legged frog isn't just a win for this one species. It's a reminder that with determination, science, and good people, we can bring nature back from the brink.